Now, because we have been in the game for so long, we are allowed to say, hey, I actually don't want to work with this client, because we have the luxury of being able to understand that there's going to be a better client that comes along. But that's also because we've been in the game for years. When I first started out, I didn't have that mindset, because it goes back to, like, you're scared that you're not going to get that money again. You're scared that you're not going to get that client again.
What you'll notice is you'll start to have resentment for working with that company or with that person. And then eventually your conversations, you start to butt heads in conversations. There'll be like small arguments and bickering over small amounts of money. And you realize that amount of money that you're getting paid from that client is not worth it. And as long as you're putting in the work behind replacing that client, then you should never worry about losing out on money, because once you set up those boundaries, you realize, like, hey, this type of clientele I don't want to work with anymore. This type of industry I don't want to work with anymore.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 1% Better Everyday podcast. My name is Jasmine.
My name is Matthew Go.
And this is the #1 space for entrepreneurs to connect, learn, and win. And today we actually wanted to talk about just firing clients, when to let go of clients, and what some red flags are around that, because I think it's an important conversation, especially to have in entrepreneurship. But if you guys can see, I actually printed out some notes. So I wanted to go into how our business choices are often really tied to fear of losing money, people pleasing, and old scarcity beliefs, which is something that we talk about all the time. But I did want to talk about, like, when do you feel like a client is a red flag versus, hey, it's just a bad day and it's like a stressful moment?
That's a really good question. I've been dealing with customers that shouldn't be my customers or our customers since we started running our business, right? And it actually takes it takes a lot, right? Like, there's like levels to awareness and self-awareness and business awareness and stuff that you have to learn and get through as the progression goes, as year goes by. And then even then, still now, I'm still trying to figure out like who I shouldn't deal with and what type of clients I should deal with, and seeing those red flags early and understanding what's a red flag to you. And everybody is different, right? So I think the most important thing is if you know yourself, and you also need to get to know yourself, and you're going to get to know yourself throughout the years of you just doing stuff and making mistakes and overcoming obstacles and stuff like that. But that's like the most important thing is just having self-awareness, right? And I think the more mature I got and the more self-awareness I gained, the more and more I realized, like, okay, this client is not a good client to work with, and this client is a good client to work with, and hey, I should stop working with this client. And it's just you take accountability for your actions, and also understanding what you want to work with as a business owner and what you don't want to work with as a business owner. It's a lot that goes into it.
Are you a service-based entrepreneur that provides some kind of service, but you don't know how to create content in order to convert someone from following you into a paying client? I'm going to tell you exactly what to post in order to start generating more leads, attract high-paying clients, and get more DMs than you can possibly answer. I will help you how to find your niche, how to find your target audience, and craft offers that will attract top buyers every time you go to make a post. Text me content to 513-516-7332 to learn more on how you can get mentored by me for only $99 a month.
Yeah. No, but I'm glad that you said that, because something that we always talk about is how you really do have to know who you are first, and you have to learn your boundaries, and that's something that we're going to talk about, how life is always going to change. You're always going to be in a different season, meaning, in one season you are able to work more, and in another season maybe you don't want to work as much. So I do want to go into that, but I think the most important thing that you said was what works for you at the end of the day. Because that is why we got into entrepreneurship, and we even talked about that, where I feel like now, because we have been in the game for so long, we are allowed to say, hey, I actually don't want to work with this client, because we have the luxury of being able to understand that there's going to be a better client that comes along. But that's also because we've been in the game for years, and I feel like when I first started out, I didn't have that mindset, because it goes back to, like, you're scared that you're not going to get that money again. You're scared that you're not going to get that client again. But
until you overcome it and realize, like, as long as I'm putting in the work, then that client or that stream of income is going to be a red flag too. So, and what you'll notice is you'll start to have resentment for working with that company or with that person, and then eventually y'all conversations, you start to butt heads in conversations. It's especially in the field that we're in, going in the creative direction. And then what happens is there'll be like small arguments and bickering over small amounts of money, and you realize that amount of money that you're getting paid from that client is not worth it. And as long as you're putting in the work behind replacing that client, then you should never worry about losing out on money, because once you align yourself with your values and your standards, and what else was you saying? You said another word, your boundaries.
Oh, boundaries.
Once you set up those boundaries, you realize, like, hey, this type of clientele I don't want to work with anymore. This type of industry I don't want to work with anymore. And
Ooh, that's a good one. Like, because even I told you recently, not to cut you off, but I told you recently, like, I don't want to work with financial coaches anymore.
yeah.
And that's even something that I've matured.
Very specific.
And I've learned how to even say out loud, because I think in the beginning, like I said, when you first start a business, you're kind of scared of saying, oh, I don't want to work with this person.
You kind of want to work with everybody.
Yeah, because you're scared that people are not going to want to do business with you.
Yeah.
But then over time, as you mature, you get to know yourself better. You get to know which clients stay on and which ones don't. I actually want people to know that, because now I don't even attract those people anymore. Those people don't even follow me.
Yeah.
And so I used to look at that as a bad thing, but look at it as a good thing. I mean, especially when you're like a seasoned entrepreneur, you're going to understand why it's so much better for you to say out loud right away who you don't want to work with. And I remember that was an exercise that like a mentor had us do when I joined her program, where she said, what are the characteristics that a client has that you don't like? And then you start figuring out which type of client or which type of person you just don't even want to do business with. Because at the end of the day, yes, we're in business to obviously make a profit and grow our business and make money. But I feel like at the end of the day, also, you have to have like a good relationship with them, meaning like they understand your value, the communication is there, and it doesn't feel like you're waking up with anxiety or you're waking up with like bickering every day, kind of like fighting for people to see your value.
Yeah, because y'all trying to reach the same goals at the end of the day, especially in our field that we're in when we're in marketing and social media. Like, we're all trying to reach the same goal. And if you're not on the same page with that person, or that person that hired you feel like they are.
Also, this is not wine, this is kombucha.
When that person that hired you, they feel like they know more than you, or they feel like they can do a better job than you, it's like, what's the purpose of hiring me? You hired us.
I think there has to be like a level of respect of like, I'm always going to be learning from you and you're always going to be learning from me.
Yeah, but you hired me for a reason.
Yes, and I feel like when that, I've just learned from experience over and over again, and we're just telling you guys this as entrepreneurs. I've been in the game for 6-7 years. You start to recognize patterns, and that's what I want to go into.
Between people,
is that you start recognizing patterns, and it's the same things every single time. And I've just learned that at the beginning, if someone doesn't see you as your equal, meaning that they hired you because they hired you for a job, and at the end of the day, you're the expert, and they should kind of even be leaning on you for expertise. They shouldn't be telling you. They should be telling you obviously what they like and what they don't like and what their story is, because that's what makes a personal brand personal. But there's like a certain level of respect of like, hey, I trust you. And so anyways, I want to go into the patterns, but I just found some red flag patterns are repeatedly crossing a boundary or pushing a boundary when you already told them that's not something I'm willing to do, or that's not something that I want to do. When have you noticed, or I guess, like, do you have any examples of like when a boundary was pushed and you were like, I already said this,
Are we talking about specifically about clients that we know not to work with anymore?
Yeah.
Well,
red flags.
One of the things that stuck out to me heavily when I first started business is that I wanted my operations to go a certain way. So when current clients reached out to me, like, you had to specifically do this to set up a meeting, or even having meetings in general was just a crazy thought to us in the beginning when we try to tell other people that, hey, we need to do certain things in order to work with you. And even then, if you feel like that person that reached out to you or that potential client that reached out to you just simply can't follow directions on how you want to do business, that's a huge red flag, because if they can't follow simple directions on how you do business, then when you guys are actually doing business together, what makes you think they're going to be able to follow directions?
Yeah, that's so true. And there's a difference between entrepreneurs that are wanting to get something done fast and they're willing to work with you versus the ones that just want something fast because they just want it done. And I think that that's a huge difference, where I've seen a lot of founders where because you're in a rush to get to a deadline or a goal, they don't even want to meet with you. They don't even want to talk about communication or guidelines or anything. But then it kind of bites them in the butt, because then when something comes back and they're like, oh, that content didn't resonate with me, or
something wasn't done right,
like something could be better, then that's where you kind of show the receipts of like, hey, we asked you, and you didn't want to sit down with us. And so once you learn that pattern of like clients kind of pushing your boundary when you already told them like, hey, we have to have a mandatory meeting, because it's to help them. At the end of the day, it's to help them. It's to help them succeed and be better.
Yeah, I'll even bring up a recent incident that happened, and this goes back to me keeping a specific like threshold or minimum price when I work for clients, because when I have a minimum price for clients, I expect certain things from certain clients. When I go below the minimum, the quote unquote cheaper clients, that's when the issues start to arise, and that's where different things popped up. So I had a client, right, a potential client. There was a price point set per edit for a reel, right? And I even knew, I was like, in the back of my mind, because that was a red flag for me, somebody had negotiated a price with me, and even I thought, I was like, this isn't going to end up how I think it's going to end up. And I knew it the whole entire time. And again, it was a quote unquote cheap price per project. So the person received their 2 edits that I gave them, and I asked them more than once, because they knew the price point, which was a cheap price point to me. And I said, hey, are you sure you want me to edit 2 more reels for you? And obviously they said, yeah. So long story short, I go to edit the 2 reels, blah, 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 XYZ. And the person that was paying me tried to negotiate me down even more to be for a cheaper price.
What?
And because we are now seasoned veterans in our business, we have standards, minimums, and we have our boundaries set. And I stood 10 toes down on my boundaries, and the person only paid me for the 1 edit. And it just goes to show you, it's like, when you go below your threshold or your minimum for your boundaries and the pricing, that's when things become a problem, because people try to short-cheap you or short-change you when you go below that threshold.
Yeah. And I think another one is I don't want to get off topic, but another one that I've just like realized that is so small is that it's the pattern of how clients react after you don't do business with them or you stand on boundaries. Like I've noticed that every client always kind of says, well, oh, you're losing out on the opportunity to learn. But if I wanted to learn, I would go buy a course or go invest into a mentorship.
Or watch a YouTube video.
Yeah. And so it's just funny how, as a seasoned entrepreneur, you have to learn when you are truly learning from someone and it's going to help you learn a new skill, versus when you're like, hey, right now in this season, I don't need to learn. Like you already have the skills, you can do the job. If people want more from you, then you need to negotiate and say, hey, I'm not willing to do that, but I'm willing to do that if there's maybe more, more money coming in.
Remember that company that I was about to do business with, and she posted a story about me because I didn't want to do something for her? She was like, imagine not working for this company because you didn't want to do this or something.
Oh,
prime
yeah.
example. Companies now, like
there was this video
2025, 2024, I've been telling the companies no. Like, because what companies will do, because I'm in video production, what companies will do in editing, what companies do, they'll ask you for like hey, can you edit something for us?
Can you edit not 1? Can you edit 3 reels for us?
Like the fuck? First of all, I run a business. I'm not a charity organization. Second of all, I will turn that down because you have to put in work and time and effort to do that stuff and then not get paid for it. So that's stuff I turn down now.
Yeah, there's a time and a place. Like I feel like it's one thing for you to create a video for a company because you chose to use it as a case, like as a case study or portfolio. It's another thing to ask creators to create free content for you instead of paying them a rate. Because there was this one company that was like, oh, we need a reel from you, but they paid you. They said, we will gladly pay you for it. So it's just...
But that's because I held to my standards and boundaries and told them that I don't do free work. Like, you have to give pushback to that. And that's also a red flag, too, with clients that I don't want to deal with, specifically since we're bringing up that topic. If they ask you, and I've had companies do that, and I've had good turnarounds with it, but that's because I gave them pushback. Like, hey, I don't do stuff for free. If you want me to make this pre-cut or pre-edit, I'm getting paid for it. And 9 times out of 10, if you give them pushback, they're going to be good for it. But you also have to consider them a red flag because they asking you to do stuff for free. We got to stop creating stuff for free. Unless it's stuff that we want to do, we got to stop creating stuff for free. And again, that's a red flag towards a potential client that I wouldn't want to work with.
Yeah, because businesses, I mean, there's always ways to get free stuff. You can get free resources through YouTube videos, through lead magnets, through content. There's so many places you can get already free knowledge of what the person does in order for you to see that they're actually good at their job. Because that's the whole point.
That's why we create portfolios.
That's the whole point of getting the free reel, getting the free video, is because they just want to see that you're good at your job. So if you already have a portfolio, then that should already be speaking for itself. So, going back to your point, you just have to learn how to decipher which opportunities are worth you going the extra mile and creating content for them for free. And, like I said, I think the right companies are always going to pay you because they respect you and they value you. But also another one is payment issues or unclear expectations. I think that's a huge one because some companies or some founders will say, we're so ready to get to work, or, they pay you once and then they kind of just drop off, or they don't speak to you ever again. And it's usually like, what happened, but it's usually because there was some level of mistrust, or they just didn't trust the process, or they weren't prepared. And so that's another red flag that I had to learn, where if they already paid you once and they're kind of like hounding you and they're like, oh, where's the work? And they're impatient, it's kind of going back to that. They don't fully trust you.
Really? I don't think I've ever had that issue where people were rushing me because, and this is off topic, but I'm usually faster at working than how people are actually processing their stuff. But that is true. If somebody is rushing you and you deem the project not as expensive, then that's a red flag too, because 9 times out of 10, just the people that we dealt with, the cheap clients, they will rush the shit out of you. But the people that are higher paying clients, to me, they might not, I wouldn't say they're not in a rush, but the way they communicate with you is differently from the cheaper clients.
Yeah, for sure. And that was something that I want to get into too, because I just learned that it's funny how my clients that pay me more now, they're the most flexible, they're the most understanding, they're the most unwilling to work with you, and because they value me and they know the type of work that I bring. And so sometimes, like I said, you have to decipher, when to do more for these, clients. But then again, that's why people always say, like, you should, what's the saying? Like, you should price like a good price and undercommit, and then if you over deliver, then it makes you look better. But don't offer a company more just to make you look good, because I feel like that's also how you attract that type of client, where they're kind of just putting more and more and more on you, and then you get into this relationship with the client where it's kind of like toxic. It's kind of like, a toxic relationship where you're just giving more and more and more of you, and then they just want more and more and more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, don't overpromise and underdeliver, because then that makes companies look bad as well. I know that's not the topic that we essentially talking about, but same thing, I'll piggyback off of what you said. Always underpromise and overdeliver as much as you possibly can, because that person that you over-delivered on is just simply not expecting the amount of work and the amount of pride and customer service and communication that you took, and that's how you get repeatable clients. Again, that has nothing to do with the topic, but that's something that I always stand by.
Well, I wanted to bring it up because again, emotional labor is part of the business. And so going back to that, like, when do you know how to let go of a client? I would say, like, first you have to know in your ability to be able to get another client back and be able to replace that money, because I know
If you want to.
If you want to, because I know in the past sometimes I've let go of clients without having any more income coming in through the door, and I will just tell you guys that was probably not the smartest decision to do. And so I say that saying that if you are going to be firing a client, you also have to know how to do it accordingly. So if you're going to fire them in 30 days, then how are you going to replace that client to what you were saying in 30 days? Because you have to be able to find a way to replace it if that's something that you want to do. But just having like that, I don't want to say negative emotional relationship, but if you're just getting to that point where it's starting to become a burden more than it gives you peace, more than the money's worth, then that's reason enough to let go of a client. I've just learned that. I think at the beginning I would work with anybody for the money, but I just wanted to include that is a part of why we're in business. Because then if you're in business and you hate your job or you hate waking up to working with this client, then you're kind of stuck working in a job for yourself, or you're miserable again.
Yeah, I even had this past summer, I had a client that I was working with. It was $1,000 monthly retainer, and at first everything was going smooth, but then I noticed a red flag is, especially if you're in the marketing business, if the client is taking forever to respond back for feedback on the projects and the work, and again, I said this earlier, but refuse to have meetings with you, right? And again, I was taking all this in. I was keeping mental mind, red flag, red flag, red flag, and what happened was at the end of the month. Now, mind you, I said this a couple of minutes ago. I work super fast, right? And the client was taking all month, because I was giving content to him every week. He was taking so long to respond back to give edits and stuff like that, right? Yeah. And because we're already in a new month, the client waited 2 weeks into the new month, because for some reason I knew he wasn't going to start his next package. He waited 2 weeks to ask me for some edits because he still owed me some money. And because I knew it was going to be the biggest headache in the world, and I knew that I didn't have time to deal with this shit because of the red flags that I was seeing from the type of client he was, I immediately I canceled out his invoice for the rest of his payment for the month, because I knew me getting paid was going to be more of a headache than me not getting paid, which I would rather not get paid so I don't have to deal with the headache, so I can move on to the next client and work on the next client and figure out where another retainer was coming from, so I don't have to necessarily deal with that client anymore, because dealing with his edits was going to be more of a headache than the $500 was worth.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, if you're someone that likes that quick money, you can absolutely love those clients, but I've just learned from experience, and maybe we've learned from experience, that it's just not worth it in the long run. It really isn't. I had to fire a client recently for almost $900, and I fired her because, I knew it was a red flag client, and that's where I think we both have said, like, we knew it before we even took a payment. And so, like, your gut is going to tell you. It's almost like your spirit is going to tell you not to take that money.
Especially now, because we've gotten so much more mature and so much more cognizant and aware of ourselves and aware of our businesses. Like, now we spot the red flags even sooner. But now, even before then, something that I really pride myself on is knowing who to work with and who not to work with previously before reaching out with them. Like, I literally have a X list. Like, don't reach out to this type of company. Only work with this type of company.
Good.
Like, I have more no's than I do have yeses. And when you're at that point in your business or your career, you don't even have to be in business, but just being a human being in general and knowing when to say no to money is like the ultimate maturity level into self-awareness, right? Knowing that just because the money is there don't mean it's a good taking, and don't mean it's going to be viable and good asset or investment in the future.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like I said, everybody has a different opinion on it, but I've just learned that this is just my opinion on it, but I feel like if you're the type of person that takes any money, then you're willing to do anything for
Money.
yeah, for money. And it's just not worth it sometimes. But Matt, I need your help growing my social media audience.
All right, guys, if you need help growing your social media audience, make sure you text 602-390-7002. Once again, it's 602-390-7002.
We just wanted to end it off with boundaries really just do create clarity for everyone involved. And again, I think the main difference between red flag clients and just those bad days are that the good clients are still going to come with stress. Don't get me wrong. Every client is going to have a little bit of stress, but there's a difference between, hey, you know, this week we're a little bit busier or more jam-packed because there's more events and it's going to be stressful in that manner, versus the clients that are stressing you out because of the actual work and they don't trust you. So learn how to spot the difference. And again, sometimes you just learn by failing, honestly, and by doing it. But we wanted to go ahead and wrap it up. So at the end of, where's my phone? At the end of, I wanted to bring it up, but I remember it. At the end of every episode, we always do like a hot topic, and I actually found a hot topic on Reddit, and they were saying, basically as a agency, when to fire clients again based on pricing, and I think we kind of already covered that. But again, like let's just say that you had to fire a client in 30 days. Like, what is the first thing that you would do?
Well, you're talking about now in 2026? Mm-hmm. Well, why was I working with that client in the first place? Assess the situation. Figure out what's going on in the situation. Figuring out what y'all working on, what y'all not working on. Or how long I've been a retainer with them for. Do I have old files of theirs that I need to collect? It's a whole like process
To
offboard that client as well. And then now is just figuring out how can you reconcile the situation, especially in, like I said, in 2026. I should know better by this time about who I'm taking and who I'm not taking.
Yeah.
So again, the most important thing is just assessing and understanding the situation and making sure you have clear communication with the business of understanding what the next steps are going forward.
Yeah, that's good. But that is it for today's podcast, you guys. Again, just keep a reminder that your business is allowed to evolve and change as you go, and that is okay. You know, it's okay to stand on business, and boundaries just mean that you do have self-respect for where you are in your journey. And I think that's the most important thing, is honestly believing in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself and your own even worth, then nobody else is going to see that.
Yeah.
But
And trust your inner gut or intuition. If something is telling you it's a red flag or something is like,
because 9 out of 10 times your gut is going to be right.
Your gut is going to be right. Not only that, when it comes to money, when it comes to process, when it comes to things looking right, like speak up. Like if you know something is wrong or right or doesn't look right, like speak up, tell somebody.
Ooh, maybe that can be, I'm going to write it down. Speak up. It's going to be our next episode, because I definitely want to talk about how do you even gain that confidence to speak up. So we can talk about that in the next episode. But again, every choice that you make today just makes you 1% better every single day. That is it for today's podcast, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Bye, you guys.